All right, we're going to talk about fixed operations. I'm going to go low tech. I'm going to work some numbers for you. So for your dealership people, this will make some sense. So fixed operations, when we're talking about the service department, the product we sell is labor. It's quantified in flat rate hour units. And when we sell labor, we sell parts. 85 to 90% of the parts in the dealership are sold through the service department on repair orders, depending on how robust your wholesale and counter retail activity is. So when we're talking about flat rate hours, that's the most important number we need to focus on. When I go into a dealership and I talk to a used car manager or a new car manager, I'll ask them how many units you have out, and they'll know that number. If I ask any salesperson, how many units are you going to sell this month, or how many units you got over the curb, they'll know that number. When I ask a service manager, how many flat rate hours have you closed, they typically don't know that number, and that's the most important key performance indicator. That's the product we sell, is labor quantified in flat rate hours. And when I say flat rate hours, it's a three-stage process. We got to sell it, we got to produce it, and we got to close it. A flat rate hour is not a flat rate hour until we close it. So the most important number I want you to focus on, dealers and general managers and service managers, is flat rate hours closed. So let's talk about, and I've only got 30 minutes, so I'm going to pack a lot into this. You in the back may not be able to see this, so I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. That's why you should be sitting up front. So let's talk about flat rate hours. What's the value of a flat rate hour? What is a flat rate hour worth? You know, we have the door rate, postal rate, labor rate, and they may be different for warranty and customer pay and internal, but let's just say your average door rate is $130. But that's not what we sell our labor for. Some of it's higher, some of it's less, but we have an average selling price called an effective labor rate, and it's less than your door rate. So let's say you have a door rate of $130, your effective labor rate, because you sell oil changes for less per hour, brake services, and other maintenance services for less, your overall effective labor rate may be $110. So let's say your labor on an hour is $110. And our gross profit on labor, it's being depressed somewhat because of the lack of technicians. There's a 30,000 deficit of technicians available, so we had to pay a little bit more because we're behind the supply and demand curve. So the cost of labor is going up a little bit. I've seen stores at 85% gross profit, and I've seen it at 50%. So 70 to 75 is a pretty good range. So let's say we're grossing 75%. On labor, which means our gross profit, 110 times 75, my lovely assistant Brittany, would be how much gross profit dollars? All right, so we make $82 gross profit every flat rate hour we close. We also have, every time we sell a flat rate hour, there's a labor to parts ratio. And let's say it's 1-to-1, which is not unusual, that we're selling the same amount of parts dollars that we do labor dollars. So we're selling $110 in labor, we're selling $110 in parts. Depends on whether we're selling warranty parts, customer pay parts, or internal parts, but we gross 40 to 45%. So let's just say it's 40%. So we got $44 in parts gross, so that's $126 gross profit every hour we sell. Okay? So if we have 10 technicians, we should be able to produce somewhere around 1,600 hours, and each hour is worth $126. Think of it this way. If we're grossing $126 for every flat rate hour, that's roughly $2 per minute. So if you have a technician who's walking around looking for a service advisor because he didn't understand the repair order write-up, and it costs him 5 minutes because the advisor's with the customer, that costs you $10. If you see 3 technicians standing at the parts counter waiting to get parts or to talk to a parts counter person, and there are 5 minutes, 3 times 5 is 15 minutes times $2, $30 in gross profit. That's lost gross profit. And that's not an inventory item you can put back on the shelf and sell tomorrow. When it's gone, it's gone. So we need to look at every minute is critical to our service technicians because it's worth $2 in gross profit. So a flat rate hour is worth roughly $120 or $2 a minute, $126. Let's talk about technician value. Some technicians are highly proficient, some are not so much, but an average technician, an average hours in a month, clock hours, is about 173 hours. That's the clock hours. And let's assume your technicians are 100% proficient. Depends on the work mix. Warranty is difficult to be over 100%. Customer pay internal, we should be able to exceed that. But let's just say it's 100%. So 173 hours times how much per hour gross profit? $126. $21,798. I'm going to round it up to 22,000. So in a month, a technician is worth 22,000 gross profit, parts and labor. Annualize that, that's going to be $250,000. So a technician, a good technician, is worth $250,000 to you in parts and labor gross profit. Now, they're just not knocking on our door anymore. They're just not out there. Now, maybe you're blessed and you've got a lot of technical staff. That's great. If you get somebody that does knock on your door that moved into your area and he's got some good credentials, you need to dehorse that guy, get his toolbox in, and we'll go through the process of, peeing in a cup and that sort of thing. But they're hard to find, and they're worth $250,000. And not only that, each technician is producing 173 hours for you, which means more warranty work, more recalls, more recons, more safeties, more customer pay. So technicians, we need to love these guys because they're worth $250,000 to us. And everybody wants your technician. Everybody wants your technician. The independents have an advantage over franchise dealers because of the 2 W's. We don't work weekends typically, and we don't do warranty. So we need to make sure we respect our technicians, not only just pay them, make sure they're paid well enough, but that we respect them, that we have decent bathrooms, that we bring their families into the equation, we have get-togethers, we know their wives and their kids, make them part of our family. You can't turn technicians. All right? Okay, let's talk about proficiency. If we're going to increase profitability in our service activity and parts activity too, because parts is a support activity. Again, 85-90% of parts are sold on repair orders. We have to increase throughput through the shop. The problem typically is not enough work coming in. The problem typically nowadays is how do we get the work through the shop. We have enough work coming in because our car sales have been good. We got a lot of warranty work. We got a pretty good amount of customer pay and internal. So how do we increase throughput through the shop? How do we manage that activity? There's 4 things we got to do. You got to recruit technicians, and everybody's trying to get them. We're not going to get into the details of how to do that. We don't have time now, but the 2 ones are still the best. It depends on the market, Craigslist and Indeed.com. Number 2, we got to retain our technicians. We got to make sure, like we talked about, we pay them fairly, we treat them with respect. The time that we know that a technician has an issue with this is not when he's rolling his toolbox at the back of the shop. We need to know that early on, so we need to have conversations with the technician, taking them out to lunch. If you got a technician that's 125% proficient, he's not worth $250,000, he's worth $300,000 in gross profit. I had a dealer not too long ago say, I've got a technician, we're paying him way too much. He's on track to earn $100,000. I thought, okay, well if he's earned $100,000 and we're grossing 75, that means we're making $300,000. So I want him to earn as much as he can because we get 75% of that gross. Does that make sense? All right, so we got to recruit, we got to retain, you got to start growing your own. You got to have an apprentice program, and these are express service techs typically. They have a good work ethic, they show up, they're doing good multi-point inspections, they got potential. We need to put them in an aggressive training program, mentor them up, send them off to factory training, and tie them down financially, help them with their tools. We're asking these technicians to come work for us, and they have to invest in their own tools. Some of them have $100,000 worth of tools and toolboxes. Can you imagine any other employee that you say, bring in your own equipment, your own desk, your own computer system, your own tools? So, and these are some young guys, and there's not a lot of them like there used to be. We have to help them. We have to invest in their tools. We have to help them invest in their training. It's investment in future. And the 4th thing we can do to increase throughput through our shop is proficiency. So proficiency is made up of 2 elements, productivity and efficiency. Productivity is A technician's in the shop 8 hours. He's clock hours, he's 8 hours. He's there 8 to 5 with an hour of lunch, that's 8 clock hours. Of those 8 clock hours, how many is he actually installed turning the wrenches? The number is nationwide 5. He's 62% productive. And you say, what? How's that possible? Well, he's waiting for parts. The snap-on tool or Matco tool truck comes in, the roach coach pulls in. He's looking for the service advisor. And dealers, general managers, service managers, go in your shop at 8 o'clock and see what's going on. Not much. And go in your shop at 4:30 and see what's going on. Not much, because this is the paradigm that we've been in since I was writing service at 1977. We write in the morning, and we deliver in the afternoon. We got 2 tsunamis in our day. We hate carryovers. And so what happens in the morning as we're writing, and then we write up, we're not pre-selling at the time of the appointment. We're not pre-selling at the time of write-up. We sell when we get the multi-point inspection. So the first hour of the day is writing up customers, dispatching the technicians. They're doing the MPI, multi-point inspection, the diagnosis, getting back to the service advisor. Service advisor is playing phone tag with the customer, and that half hour or 45 minutes is dead to that technisian. If he's got one stall, that stall is dead. He's got to pull the car back out, $2 a minute, $2 a minute, $2 a minute. Pull it out, get redispatched, another RO, go find the car, hopefully you can find the keys to the car, bring it back in, do the same process a second time. All those are dead minutes at $2 a minute. So we're losing a half hour in the morning and a half hour in the afternoon. The best way to do is I want to write up all day long. I want carryovers. Advisors are scared to death of carryovers. And yes, it incurs some expense of alternate transportation. May have some loaner car or rental car, or Uber, or Lyft, or shuttle costs involved. But there's some customers that don't want to interrupt their morning process and come in at 7:30 and line up with everybody else. A carryover from a production point of view is a beautiful thing. If we can find a way to go from 5 to 6 hours a day, 1 more hour by smart dispatching, smart workflow control, by plugging in the mornings and afternoons with maybe PDIs or recon safeties, and having some carryovers. Some customers are fine. They'll come back at 10 o'clock. And that way we smooth out, tamp down some of those tsunamis that we have in the morning and the afternoon. If we can go from 5 to 6, 1 hour per technician. So 1 hour times 10 technicians, that's 10 more flat rate hours per day. An hour, flat rate hour is worth $126. So that's 10 times $126, that's $1,260 additional gross profit per day times 22, 1,260 times 22. Is $27,000 additional parts and labor gross profit per month. A 10 technician shop. If you got 15 techs, multiply that by 1.5. If you got 20 techs, double that number. That's additional parts gross profit, parts and labor gross profit. Additionally, think about this, the technician still has to get up every morning and brush his teeth and put his underwear on and come to work. He's already going to be there. If we can do another 10 hours or another hour per day, that means he's earning more money. And we want them to earn more money. Put some silver handcuffs on these guys. They already got to be there, so let's maximize the time there. $27,000 gross profit per month times 12 is $300,000 additional gross profit per year for the shop and the technicians making more money. So we got to always look at how we're writing up, how we're dispatching, our workflow control. Get your productivity up from 5 to 6. The other aspect of proficiency is efficiency. Efficiency is they're in the shop, they're in their stall 5 hours. When they're in the stall, how many hours are they actually flagging? That's a byproduct of how motivated they are, what kind of incentive plans you have, or how skilled, how experienced, how physically fit they are. That's efficiency. Typically, they're 8 hours and they're working 5, they can flag 8 hours. So they're about 130% efficient. Overall, we're trying to get our proficiency up to 100% or more. Make sense? Okay. All right. So productivity improvement, again, 1 hour is worth 27 some thousand. Okay. And the same goes with efficiency. Okay. All right. Let's talk about effective labor rate. Effective labor rate is your average selling price per hour. You've got a customer effective labor rate, you've got an internal effective labor rate, a warranty effective labor rate, and an overall effective labor rate. So currently your overall effective labor rate is, let's just say $110. And we're going to say we're doing 1,600 hours. A 10-man shop with 90% proficiency, that's about right. So $110. And what if we're selling 1,600 hours? What if we get our effective labor rate from 110 to 115? $5 more. How do we do that? Variable labor rates, making sure we're not discounting, we don't have to, shopping the competition, supply and demand dictates because of the lack of technicians. There's going to be some markets where we can get a higher rate for diesel. Some areas, we've got to be super sensitive about the market, and there's some areas we're leaving money on the table. So if we can raise our overall effective labor rate, and maybe we're discounting internal, maybe we haven't applied for a warranty rate increase, you got to stay on top of that. Maybe you're automatic, but maybe you got to apply and jump through those hoops that the manufacturers require, jump through the hoops. If we get a $5 increase, that's an additional $8,000 in sales per month. That's also $8,000 additional gross profit per month. We're not selling any more hours. We're not buying any more hours from the technician. We're just selling each one at $5 higher. Our effective labor rate now is $115. That's an additional $8,000 gross profit. And think about this. When I'm talking about gross profit, and that's just labor. That's just labor gross profit. My commissions to my service salespeople and my service advisors run between 9 and 12%. So let's say it's 10%. So when I'm producing an additional $8,000 per month, I pay 10% in selling costs, I'm netting out $7,200. Same number of technicians, same number of hours, same number of everything. So I'm netting out $7,200 more per month times 12 is somewhere around $86,000 additional net profit. You with me? That's increasing effective labor by $5. Get your warranty rate increases. Stop discounting internal. I'll talk about that here in a minute. Use variable labor rates. Shop the competition. Make sure we're not leaving any money on the table because these are some pretty big dollars here. Again, that's net profit. Okay. Well, I've got a clock hour tech. I've got a tech on clock hours. And by the way, never pay your techs clock hours, please. I had a dealer not too long ago. It was a 9 dealership group, and he wanted to make sure he kept his technicians, so he talked to them, what would you like to have? Oh, guarantees. So he put them on clock guarantees. Well, what happens to your proficiency? It just tanks. So your proficiency goes down, and here's what happens. So I got a technician, I've got a technician over here. I'm only paying him $18 an hour. He's a steal. Oh, okay. So we're paying him $18 times 40 hours, clock hours, so we're paying him $720 a week. Okay, that's great. How many hours is he flagging per week? Well, 20, but he's cheap. Okay, so it's $720 and I'm flagging 20, so what's my cost per flat rate hour? $36 per flat rate hour. He's not so cheap anymore, is he? Just be careful when you have somebody on clock. Now, if a guy is 100% proficient, he's only costing me $18 an hour. So just be careful that we don't put technicians on guarantees. They want them, but when they get on guarantees, their proficiency is going to go down, your cost of sales is going to go up, your gross profit and labor is going to tank. All right, I got time for one more. Discounting internal. All right, so let's just say we got an RO that's worth $700 and depends on the parts to labor ratio, but let's say it's we got a $300 cost to sell, and I'm grossing $400 in the shop. Remember, I pay my service advisors between 9 and 12%, so my cost for for my sales force is 10%, so I'm going to take 40% off, so I'm going to essentially have a fixed selling net of $360. Well, let's just go ahead and discount internal to cost. It's an extreme. I know you don't do it to cost. Well, some shops do, but let's just say we did. So let's take this $700 and now we're going to sell it, give it to the sales department at $300. Well, first, I'm not sure that their gross on those cars are going to go at $400. Survey says no, but let's just say it does. Let's say their gross goes up $400. How much are we paying our salespeople? 25, 30%? Let's say 25%. So now we're going to take $100 commission off that. Now we're going to have a $300. Okay? If we keep it in service, this $400 gross, we have a guarantee of $360. If we transfer that gross to the sales department, we may have $300. So it costs you $60 times, let's say you got, this is just take used, 60 used, 60 times 60 is $3,600 it costs you. And you say, well, it's putting it from one pocket to the other. Well, that's true, but I got 360 here, and by the time I put it over here, I've got 300. And that $3,600 additional times 12, annualized, $40,000. $40,000 annualized is what? $40,000 what? Lost gross? No, that's net profit. That's net, because we're increasing our commissions by transferring gross to the sales department. And commissions are personnel expenses, and personnel expenses is the same as a net profit dollar. So by discounting internal, you're costing the dealership net profit dollars. Oh, but the sales manager says, I can get this work done cheaper somewhere else, so I'm going to sublet it out. I can get this $700 job done down the street for $500. So I sublet the car out. Okay, so I saved the dealership $200. Okay, so that $200 additional gross is commissionable at 25%, so really that's $150. So I'm going to take $400 guarantee, and I'm going to end up with $150 in this pocket, and I'm paying my competition $250. Does that make sense? Whenever you're subletting out, you're putting your money in their pockets. Keep the money in the dealership. Now, why do we discount internal? Because we all came up through the variable end. I did the same thing. Oh, we're getting raped by the service department. Keep the money in the dealership. Stop discounting, because all you're doing is taking guaranteed gross, making it possible gross, guaranteed at 10% commission, turning it into guarantee maybe at 25% commissionable. Does that make sense? Okay. So that'll make you some money right there. And that's all the time I have. So that concludes our lesson for the day. Okay, thank you.